For November the 23rd, we rewrote some syntax definitions, banged our head against the YouTube API documentation wall, and wrote enough code to get ourselves back to where we started. Hello, fellow Sublime Text fanatics. Odan here. Welcome to the Devember devlog update for November 23rd. It is critically late, as we can see up here, and I want to get this thing out, so let us jump right into it. Today's work was a little bit over an hour. It was a very busy day. All the cookies that we've spent the last few days making went out for delivery, and once all was said and done, we just sort of sat and vegetated for a little bit. But nevertheless, I did do some work here, and the first thing we did was update the syntax definition that we created in the last live stream, I believe, unless I did this yesterday. But I'm pretty sure I did this in the live stream. I can't even remember now. I haven't been sleeping a whole lot lately with all the stuff that's been going on. But basically, the syntax definition that we used for our missing API item, our missing table of contents items in the report that we were working on, pretty sure that was a live stream related thing. But who can say at this point the days blend together? I guess I could look in the Git log, but what fun is that? We modified things a little bit, and basically because what we had before was a single line of a title and then video IDs, and I wanted to have a little bit of a separator in there, so we modified. So instead of the first line, there's a title, and we can actually match and leave this scope when we hit a string of some number of dashes instead. And we also modified our video content a little bit as well, so that we can inject text in the form of video ID equals and the name of a video ID, give that whole thing a particular scope so that later on we can remove it out and keep a record of what video ID was associated with a particular line in the file. That's going to make more sense in just a minute. We then move into actually modifying the code that we created to generate our report, so that as we can see here, we can actually use a separator line to make this a little bit nicer. And when we inject our text out, we need to include the video ID equals bit that is sticking on the front there, which as we just saw in the syntax, gets itself a special scope. And we also capture the panel that we used to create the report text, because we're going to be doing something with that in just a moment. And that thing is this. The idea behind this whole thing, what we're doing here, I don't think I said at the beginning, is that when we generate our little report at the bottom in a panel or in a view, if we have the settings set that way, what we want to have is a tiny little section of buttons for edit this and view information or something along those lines, then the title of the video. So what we need to do is get the video ID associated with each title into the buffer in a way that it can be removed out and replaced with something else, or a record made of what the video ID is for that line, so that we don't see the video ID, but the underlying plugin code can still use it, which is a powerful technique to do, something like this. I banged my elbow on the desk. To do it in override audit, for example, in some report instances. I do it in the hyperhelp package to be able to keep a track of where there are anchors and links and other hidden informations, and when we're using it here as well. So we have just a very simple command whose job is to be a text command, because you need a text command to modify the contents of a buffer, to find all of the meta record YouTube scopes, which is the scope that we added for that video ID equals line, and just grab the text, figure out the video ID, and then erase the region away. So this change would actually allow take the input of the stuff that we just created into the buffer and remove it back out. So visually, it looks like absolutely no change has been made, even though we wrote some code for this thing. And then, of course, we actually call this to do something. Now, the result of all of that is, and we also, sorry, I forgot there's one more commit here. I modified this to actually invoke the command that we just created, and then we modify the meta command to actually do something. Now, there's a little bit of work that went into here. The original commit for this, you may have noted, was scanning over the reversed list of this and deleting things, but that isn't actually what we want to do here. We need to go forward through this and not backwards, because we're leaving phantoms in the place of everywhere where we delete some text. And phantoms are associated with regions in the buffer, and they will move around as the content of the buffer is modified. So if you watch the video on the other channel about modifying videos and why you might need to have the ability to go forwards through and not back, this is a prime example of that. So basically, if you watch that video, you know what we're doing here. We have an adjustment value that starts at 0 every time we grab one of these new regions out of the list. To iterate over top of it, we create a new region that moves it backwards by the adjustment amount, which starts by 0 but gets adjusted by the length of this region, so that as we go forward through the file, all the regions that we found are backed up through by the amount that they're being erased, allowing us to do some things here. Now, basically, we take the control HTML that we were actually given and do the format exclude or template expansions, it should say, that we say we're doing, which right now is just the ID of a video, and then we include it as a phantom. And of course, we haven't talked about phantoms yet in plugin 101. Maybe if you view the live stream, which is going to happen tomorrow on this very channel at 8 p.m. Pacific, or probably today based on how late it is and how long it's going to take this video to upload when I'm done, after I sweeten the audio just a tiny, tiny bit. But we create a set of phantoms with this particular name. As we create each one of these things, we append a new phantom that contains this control HTML text as an inline, and at the end, we insert it. And that's all we're doing here. And if we actually were to jump to Sublime, you can actually see what the result of all of this actually is. So this, as we can see, is a phantom. You can see I can select this text. I can't select that. These are inline phantoms of HTML, which just say controls here, because we haven't actually got to that particular part of this whole operation yet, but we can see we have the nice title here. I want to change the scope on this to not be orange, if that's going to be orange, because this just sort of turns out this particular way in this color scheme. I don't particularly like that, but this is going to be a couple of little buttons. Now, this doesn't seem like a lot of work to be done in an hour, and as a matter of fact, it wouldn't have taken quite that long. I actually implemented this particular code. I had a slight confusion about why this was doing this the way that it wasn't working as I was going over them backwards, going through the buffer the very first time. And then as soon as it looked wrong, I thought to myself, okay, I know why that's the case. The regions are changing, no problem. I used a different API method to try to get around that, adding regions, because regions that are in the buffer will actually be modified as editing happens. But that didn't work the way I wanted. And then I just said, okay, fine, we'll do it this way. So there was only a couple of minutes spent there. Believe it or not, the larger portion of the time that I spent was working on the syntax, and specifically this variable declaration right here, because we need to know about what a video ID is to be able to capture it in here. And be darned if the YouTube API documentation is really canny about what this could actually be. I scoured the documentation. I did a bunch of Google searches. Best I could find is this is the characters that appear. It's 11 characters long. However, Google is very canny. They will not commit to saying what characters may or may not appear in a video ID or what the length might actually be. The only thing you need to know about a video ID is they fall out of requests such as these ones here, if I have any in here. If you want one, ask the API for one. If you just have some text and you want to know if it's a YouTube ID, Google's actual official response is make a web request to try to view the page and see if you get a 404 error. And if you do, it's not a valid video ID, but if it works, then it's a good one. That's not going to work in a syntax. It's kind of stupid on the base of it. I don't know why they couldn't have a specific documentation that says currently it's 11 characters. It could change. It could be this. It could be more. Let's just go ahead and have some sort of fallback. You know, they can change the version on this API. Who knows what they're doing, but that is what I spent a lot of this time doing. But we do have this stuff going. So what we're going to do in tomorrow's live stream is play around with actually putting some controls in here, so that instead of this ugly link hanging off the back, there could be a little pencil icon to edit this, or something to view it in the actual editor the way this is doing. or see some more information on this. For example, we might want to hover over the name of this and see a pop-up of the description. That's the kind of stuff we're probably going to be working on in tomorrow's live stream. So if you would like to get in on a little bit of that action, feel free to use the button down below to subscribe and share, ring the bell notification icon. YouTube will tell you. Follow me on Twitter as well if you'd like to do that sort of thing. For now, though, I am out of here so I can get this bad boy uploading. And until the live stream tomorrow or the next video update on the following day, this is Odat Nerd asking you to please have happy holidays and a sublime day.